Shalom and welcome to another in our series of podcasts from Temple Beth Am, a dynamic center for conservative Judaism in Los Angeles.
We're now chapter 3, verse 13, and Amos is now going to expand the scope of God's punishment he's going to talk about the temple in Beit El, and that will pop up again in chapter 4. And he then talks also about some of the other homes of the wealthy. Apparently these are not necessarily fortified homes, but you can tell they're from the wealthy from the way they are described, because, he doesn't like wealthy people, apparently. All right, so we read verse 13, Shimu, v'hayidu b'beit Yaakov num Adonai Elohim Elohei Tzvaot. All right, so listen up and bear witness in the house of Jacob, the word of Adonai Elohim, Elohei Hatzvaot. Now, just one point again. I see Adonai Elohim, excuse me, the way it's written here, really it means my sovereign or my master, Yud-Heh Vav-Heh, right? But when I told you, we talked about this a few times ago, because of the way we're supposed to say names and not say names, the vocalization is Adonai Elohim. But in fact, the Hebrew says, my master or my sovereign, Yud-Heh Vav-Heh. We would say Hashem. So when I'm going to read it the way Amos wrote it, not the way the Masoretes vocalized it. Now, I don't care what anybody says. That's what I am going to do. Okay. All right. Now, the one question I want to begin with is this. Why does it say the house of Jacob suddenly? Right? Remember, he's talking to Israel, the northern kingdom. Obviously, Israel and Yaakov are the same person, right? We all know about that. But why here is he talking about the house of Jacob?
Didn't Jacob had a dream?
Wait. I got to see hands. Tybel's hand is up, and then Ellie's hand.
Didn't Jacob
Oh, wait, Ellie, wait, you're second.
I think it's because the using Jacob and not even Israel is a reminder that the tribes, both kingdoms, come from the same place and should be held to the same standard of behavior.
Say that again, that the tribes.
Okay, when you say Jacob, that's the father and grandfather. Israel is the tribes, but I think it's a way of emphasizing that the source for the human beings in both kingdoms came from the same family, tribe, traditions, and should be held to the same ethical standards, which are high.
Saying he's focusing on the familial connection,
yes,
rather than the political one. I got it. Yeah, that's a good thought. Yeah, I have a different concept, but that's a good thought, honestly. Yeah, very good. Okay. All right, Ellie?
If my memory is correct, didn't Jacob had a dream and he built a Mishkan there in the north there?
Yes, and where was that?
I think it was Shem, wasn't it?
No, it was Beit El.
Beit El, yeah, that's it.
Yes, that's what I think. I think because we're going to now, there's a shift in focus that will take place beginning here, but continuing further on in chapter 4 about Beit El. And I think that because Jacob was the one who double consecrated the place.
Right.
He put up the matzeva first time when on his way out, right? And then he does it again second time on the way back, and establishes it as a shrine, with an altar, and that offers a sacrifice to God. So that's Jacob's doing, and that was Beit El. Yeah. But I want to mention something else, though. And this goes back to what Tybal said, that, as said Jacob, it's interesting. All 12 of if you read the narratives, the name used with respect to the birth and issues relating to the 12 children are Jacob. In fact, this led me to do some research, and this goes back to what you said, Tybal, that this is the family thing. The name Yaakov is mentioned a little bit more than 350 times in the Tanakh, in the Bible. The name Israel, Yisrael, is mentioned 2,512 times in the Bible. How do I know? Because I counted in the concordance. Now, my counting may be off a little bit because, it's very tiny print, but I'm pretty close. Now, the interesting thing, though, is in Genesis, and again, it goes back to the notion of more to the beginnings, the roots. In Genesis, Yisrael is mentioned 43 times. In Genesis, Yaakov is mentioned 179 times. Now, part of that is because it happened before his name was changed. But the interesting thing is, even after his name change, you see the name Yaakov, in fact, immediately after in both instances. Remember, the first time is when he wrestles with Elijah, right? And then the second time, wrestles with the angel, right? He wrestles with the angel. And the second time is when he actually sanctifies Bethel as a worship location. And God says, your name will no longer be Israel. In both of those instances, the next paragraph, it's Yaakov again. And it's as if the major sources in that part of the Torah are to emphasize Yaakov. It's really, I never thought, but there you go. And the other thing is even with the covenants, right? There's a quasi-covenant that, it's not a real covenant when Jacob puts up the pillar on a way out, but then the major, reaffirming of the covenant with mention of Abraham and Isaac, and Jacob being the next in line at Bethel. So the covenant thing in this whole account revolves around Jacob. So I think that's the reason why here. Okay, and but again, you learn things all the time, and I had no idea about the difference in numbers between the names Yaakov and Yisrael. It's 9-1, maybe 8.5-1 in favor of Yisrael. Okay, that's my name, of course. So I'm very happy that that's my name is mentioned 20 times. Don't worry, it won't go to my head. All right, 1 second. So first, Eli and then Tybal.
Couldn't we just say that he mentioned the name Jacob when he wants to relate to the past, to the past of the Jewish conditions, and we're right now to Israel, to the local, to the present situation in the north.
Yeah, but he's talking now, but he uses Jacob now. Amos is using Jacob to deal with the present situation.
No, but he wants to mention this is a holy place. It's Beit Yaakov. And then he switched into Israel to talk to the people who are...
Oh, yeah, no, but right, of course, no, but I would say the following. I don't think Jacob is mentioned a great deal in the book of Amos either. Yisrael is the term that Amos uses, right? But I think what I'm saying is the Yotzei Dofin here, the exception, is what you said, is the notion of this being at a place where Jacob was really significant.
Yeah.
That to me is absolutely correct. Okay, Tybal, and then I'm going to move on.
It's a comment and a little part of a question, but not for now, which is the trope of synecdoche, which the rabbis like, when in particular they use Ephraim to mean all of the Jewish people.
Yes. Hold on. Yes. All right.
So, but that
I was going to go there. Go ahead.
Oh, really? Okay. But I think I once looked, but I don't really remember that. And it makes logical sense. Whenever it's Ephraim, because that was a grandson, it's always going to be Israel, the association, because it doesn't make sense in the same way. Even though, as the parsha we just had, Yaakov says, these are the ones, they're alive now. They're going to be like sons. If you have sons after I die, they're not going to be like sons because I can't do whatever. But there's the Ephraim being the most fruitful, the most populous tribe, and the connection to the covenant of how supposedly, the many grains of sand and stars in the skies, and that being Ephraim reinforcing that particular set of covenantal promises.
Right. No, that's exactly right. Yes, Ephraim. Look, when Jacob's on his deathbed, and Joseph is there with his two sons, right, with Ephraim and Manasseh, and Jacob wants to bless them. Okay, so what does he do? And Manasseh was sitting on to Jacob's right, and Ephraim was sitting to Jacob's left. But when he went to bless them, what did he do? He crossed his arms, so his right hand was on Ephraim, and his left hand was on Manasseh, meaning that Ephraim would be the dominant tribe. And indeed, and that's the whole point, because the reality was Ephraim was the single most powerful tribe in the northern kingdom, and one could say in the whole country. Right, Ephraim was. And so the fact is, what the nation called Yisrael was dominated by Ephraim. So again, house of Jacob, and this sort of significant moment where he's starting to talk about the religious center there. All of these aspects are sort of coming into play, and so it says Beit Yaakov. But everybody's right. Right away, it continues in verse 14. Gibeon Pakti Pishay Yisrael. Right? There's Yisrael, is right back in.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. So now verse 14. Ki biyom pakdi pishay Yisrael alav, ufakadeti al mizbachot Beit El, v'nigdeu karnot hamizbeach, v'naflu la'aretz. When I punish Israel for its transgressions, I will wreak punishment on the altars of Beit El, and the horns of the altar shall be cut off and shall fall to the ground. Okay? Now, we talked about this once before, and just to jog your memory, even though I didn't send this in, I will hold it very carefully. Look at the screen. Does it look familiar?
Mm-hmm.
That's the four-cornered, the four horns, the four karnot of the altar. Okay? And the horns, you can see, should the horns be knocked off, what does it do to the altar?
Basically,
exposes it.
But doesn't it also
loses its sanctity? Well, let me finish. Its sanctity is negated, and it's useless. You can, and the Torah, the Bible, and the Torah also mentions that if someone feels that they have been charged with a crime or they're being threatened, if they can run to the altar, remember the countryside, this is in Beersheba. This is not Jerusalem. This is Beersheba, which had a shrine. Okay, and obviously it's not the original, but it's a very accurate representative of it, because they had enough stuff to be able to, theorize what it looked like. But the point is, if you felt that you were being challenged or threatened, and you wanted to buy some time, if you could run to a shrine with a horned altar and hold on to the horns, one of the horns, nobody would touch you, and therefore you could express your feelings and proceed. So this was a significant thing. Anyway, so what he says here is absolutely correct, right? If you knock off the horns, then the altar is pasul, right? It has no sanctity. You can't use it. If you do, you're not operating your sacrifices appropriately, and it's a waste. Okay, all right, Tybal.
But also, sorry, the whole hand motion not really working on muting. But it's also just practically, if the horns are gone, sacrifices are slippery, and even on a smooth surface, the sacrifice might not stay put.
Oh, it's possible. What you're saying is it also has a practical function. It's possible. I never thought about that. Could be. Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. Yeah. Well, very often, things that begin as a practical thing ultimately become ritualized and have suddenly become a sacred act, right? I mean, the best example that I can give is, Havdalah. Why do we use incense or besamim, spices, at Havdalah time? Anybody know? Well, for a sweet week, yes, but there was a practical reason, because when you served a meal, especially a very elaborate meal, afterwards you normally would light incense in order to get the stink out of the house. But Friday night, you can't light incense. So the stink stays there all during Shabbos. Now, you can open the windows, but at night you close the windows. I mean, I don't know what they had. Anyway, but the point is, so one of the first things you want to do when Shabbos is over is get the stink out of the house. So that as under the rabbis, this notion developed that that's why you light it then. And it has now, but it also, you say a bracha over it, which elevates it now to the level of a sacred act. It's the same thing with Shabbos candles. Why do you light 2 Shabbos candles? Why not just one? And again, this is rabbinic. You cannot find Shabbos candles in the Bible. Okay?
Something about halot, isn't it?
No,
no, that's the 2 portions.
It's the 2 versions. Remembering, remember Shabbos and honor Shabbos, isn't it?
No, that's Midrash.
Oh, you're right.
And what's wrong with Midrash?
Manna is the manna.
No, the reason, really, there's a pragmatic reason there.
I agree. No.
You cannot. Shabbos, the meal on Shabbat is different from the other meals generally because it is done after sundown, and you're going to be sitting eating your dinner in a room that needs more light than usual. And so the notion of 2 candles meant you could have one, let's say, in the area of the room. Let's say it was 1-room house. Okay, so you have one over there where you're eating and one over there where you're, let's say, getting ready for washing, or one where you prepare the food and one where you eat the food. The point being, you have to deal with the fact that by definition, because you wait until you have your Shabbos meal on Shabbat, ideally, Now, granted, we know you can have it earlier and you can light candles earlier. But the whole idea developed, though, at a time when you ate normally, people probably ate their dinner when the sun was setting, so they still had some light. And very often, what would they do at night? I mean, especially if you're a farmer, you're tired, you go to bed, you get up at 4 a.m. and go to work. So you got to think in terms of a different daily calendar, shall we say, or a different time frame. But the two candles, it makes sense that they were needed for light. And by the way, technically speaking, you could use the Shabbos candles for light, but as opposed to the Hanukkah candles, which you cannot use for light. But if you read the Mishnah and the Talmud on that, it says, yeah, you can, but in the Talmud they go and say you really shouldn't because you may be inclined to move it or to tilt it, do something with it. That would be Mechalel Shabbos. But theoretically, you could read by the light of Shabbos candles, but you shouldn't because of what might happen. Okay. All right. Anyhow. All right, AJ.
So reaction to the first of all, a question about the altar, the reproduction of an altar that you showed. Weren't the stones supposed to be unhewn and therefore they would be rough? Those are shown as the model shows it smooth and like bricklayers put it together. And
they did. You're right. But on the other hand, if you look at it, there is roughness in it. You see that?
Yeah, it looks like pretty
You're
smooth.
right.
Actually,
I agree. I agree.
But okay. And you answered one question. Reaction to the idea of the spices at Havdalah. For some crazy reason, I always thought it was like to revive us because we had just lost our extra soul.
We have an extra
Interesting. That's nice. Yeah, it could be. I mean, look, I'm trying to get to the root of the matter on the principle of pragmatics. Okay.
Okay.
And I think that there is. I'm not excluding anything that anybody else had said. So so the Bible said, "What's wrong with midrash? Nothing." And they, for all I care, that they may all have been generated at the same time. The point I'm trying to make is though that sometimes pragmatics dictates things that ultimately become ritualized. That was my point.
Okay.
So more likely, just as likely as the idea of moving a light around in the room or not moving it but stationing it is what happens if you have one candle. Candles blow out easily.
Yes. Right, exactly. So this way
you got redundancy is a good thing.
Yeah, right. Yeah, could be. Yep, agreed. Yes. Okay, now, excuse me. So he now he's talking, and then, but the point is, yes, we explained that, right? Now, why does it say mizbachot Beit El? That's plural.
Different altars. I mean,
what does that mean?
There's more than one.
What are the others, or what is the other?
That I'm not sure of, but obviously it's a plural.
Yeah, what is it? Where the Israelite worship centers, right? The shrines in Jerusalem that dotted the countryside, in Beit El, in Dan, okay, generally speaking, had two altars. One was the altar for animal sacrifices. Does anybody know the second one?
Showbread, maybe.
No, that's not an altar. Close, good, but that's not it. You're very close in terms of positioning, but no.
Grains, the whole grains, as in what came from the fields.
No. That went on the big altar. That was part of the sacrifice package. Besamim, the incense altar that was placed in the outer chamber of the enclosed shrine. Okay, because burning incense itself is a sacrifice. It is an offering. Okay, and so there are two altars, the big one on the outside and the little one on the inside. Okay, and that's Bible. Okay, if you read the details in Exodus of the building of the various items, you will see the altar for the incense. It's got its own little section where it describes how it's put together, et cetera, et cetera.
Rabbi, what was the purpose of those mizbechot?
Well, again, one was to burn the incense.
Yeah, but what was the purpose?
Oh, that was showing your commitment to God. It's part of your it's like prayers today, right? It was when you say sacrifice, I mean, it really was in the sense that when you offered animals, you were giving up something that had meaning to you, right?
I understand that.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's a sign of your commitment to God. And similarly, and the interesting thing is that all of the reach nichoach, a pleasing aroma, right? You would assume would go with the incense, yes, because it's sweet, yeah. But on the other hand, that also is used for the animal sacrifices. So my response is, have you ever tasted a nice big fat or smelled a nice big fat steak when it's cooking? I start drooling, right?
Yes.
So also. Now I grant once it's finished, it starts to stink because you got all the burnt junk over there.
Right.
And they have to clean it off, and they do that at night. I mean, they burn it off and they clean it up at night. Anyhow, but the point is, it is a physical way for the Israelite to get the sense that they are making an offering to God. The pagans had a different take on it. In addition to what I'm saying, pagans believed that you were actually feeding the gods.
They brought food.
Right, food. Israelite religion, generally speaking, does not have that. And the closest you get is this concept of pleasing aroma. Okay, so what does God smell it with? Okay, well, God has his ways.
Yeah.
He doesn't have a nose. Even though it says in the Bible, Vayichar af Hashem, God's nose was burning.
Right.
What? Right? And his hand, it says Yad Chazakah.
Well, Hashem is always described in sometimes as in human terms. Too,
exactly. Right? So, and it is all intended to be metaphor, but it's based on the fact that the predecessors of Israelite monotheism and Israelites themselves, who were, confused as to what monotheism is about, the concept there were gods that had all these things.
Well, not only that, but that you could influence the weather or your crops.
Yes.
Sacrificing. I mean, the ultimate would be a human sacrifice, but they thought this was going to influence their.
But influence is also a notion of feeding, right? It's not just spiritual or emotional. It's physical. It's all of them, right? It's all of them. Whereas ideally speaking, the sacrifices that you read about in the Bible are supposed to be spiritual. It's a physical thing for you to get the sense that you're doing something physical in order to either plead with God, praise God, thank God, whatever the purpose was, do teshuvah, ask for repentance, right? Admit your guilt. Because the offering, if you read the list of sacrifices, they cover a wide range of needs, of spiritual needs of the worshiper. So that's what it was about, and it was a physical thing because we're physical people. So you had to build into the system. Maimonides said it very well. In the Moreh Nevuchim, in the Guide of the Perplexed, Maimonides asks, he says, so why did if prayer is superior to offering sacrifices because it's feeling, right? It's not physical. Because Maimonides wanted to remove all and as much physicality from Judaism as he could. So prayer is good. Of course, even better is philosophical meditation. All right, so you have these spiritual ways of reaching God. Why did God mandate sacrifices? And his answer was because back then that's all they knew. And God had to accommodate, for where they were ideologically at that stage in their development. That's what his answer is. But whether he's right or wrong, I'm not going to get into an argument. But the fact is, though, that that's indeed what happened. Because remember, the Israelites today, the vast majority of contemporary Bible scholars will say they evolved out of pagans into monotheists. Okay, and in a sense, Arameo Vedavi. Right, my father was a wandering Aramean.
Right.
And the Arameans were pagans. Right. Now the story about Abraham breaking the idols, that's Midrash. In the Bible, lo haya lo nivra, right? It never existed. But the point is, there's a recollection of the fact that we evolved out of non-monotheists. And that's historically, archaeology and studying of the texts indicates that that's correct. Okay. All right. Now, in addition to the temple, okay, verse 15, Vihiketi, now listen to this. Vihiketi Beit HaChoref al Beit HaKayitz, V'avdu Batei Hashem, V'safu Batim Rabim. Okay. So I will wreck the winter palace, right? And the summer palace, right? And the ivory palaces will be destroyed, and the great houses shall be destroyed, declares God. So this is not where the poor, downtrodden Israelite lives, right? Again, we're talking about the God taking out his anger upon the wealthy. All right, so now this conversation, or not wrong term, but this discussion and this presentation does not end with the chapter, but excuse me, it now continues into the beginning into chapter 4. So you really have to view chapter 4 as it's one of those instances when you could make the case that you have one long chapter, but we'll see there's something different right here. But again, we're going back to Shomron, right? We were at Beit El for a moment, but before that we were in Shomron. All right, and now the first line of chapter 4, okay, so what does it say? And this is now the punishment is going to continue, but now a new element comes in. It shows us that Amos was a feminist. All right? Shimu hadavar hazeh parot habashan, asher bahar shomron, haoshkot dalim, harotzetzot evyonim, haomrot la'adonehem, havia v'mishteh. All right? So hear this word, you cows of Bashan, on the hill of Samaria. So we're back in Shomron. See, that's a connector that going back to where we were at the earlier part of chapter 3. Okay. So hear this word, you cows of Bashan,
middle of a class.
On the hills of Samaria, who extort or oppress the poor, who oppress the needy, and say to their husbands, your husbands, bring and let's carouse. All right, so who are the cows of Bashan?
Well, come over.
Who are the cows of Bashan? Gabrielle, are you on the phone?
I'm sorry, why don't we close the audio? I'm sorry.
Yes.
My daughter seems to have to possibly evacuate, so.
Oi.
So I'm sorry.
That's okay. No. Can you find?
I don't know where you do it.
How do you? Yeah, you're supposed to.
No, they're on the screen. Wiggle your whatchamacallit at the bottom left hand side.
Yeah. Okay, I have to bring it up.
There's audio. There's a picture of a microphone. Bottom left.
Oh yeah, here it is.
Yeah, click on that. Good. Okay, and I hope everything is well with your kids. God forbid. Oy vey. All right. And if you need to get off the phone, don't even give it a second thought. So who are the Parot HaBashan? Tybal.
Aren't they the women?
Yes. The big fat women. The fat, wealthy women.
We prefer the term of generous proportions.
Thank you. Yes. Large women. How's that?
That was highly desirable back then. It meant they were healthy.
Yes, exactly.
They could.
You're right. Yes, the more the better. The more the better. Yes.
Yeah, and also if they were too thin, then it was thought that their husbands couldn't support them.
Well, I mean, if you read Shir HaShirim, you know, her belly is a beautiful little hill.
You see, that's.
Yeah, she wasn't pregnant as far as we know because they weren't married yet. So, read it; it's very sensuous. All right.
Yeah, I love it.
So, but we'll see later. I'm going to give you some examples of how that notion of the Sharot with this notion of Bashan, what it means. Bashan is basically it's the Golan and the area is not, maybe south of it a bit. Bashan is the part of the area that the 2.5 tribes that requested to be settled on the east side of the river got, right, with the caveat that they had to go with the other tribes for the conquer as Eretz Yisrael or Canaan, and then they could go back across the Jordan. The 2.5 tribes, let's see, I'll get it here: Reuven, Gad, and the half a tribe of Menashe. So those 2.5 tribes were actually on the east side of the Jordan, and that was Bashan. Part of it was Bashan. Okay, it was more than that, but part of it was Bashan, the northern part, which today would be
Jordan.
Right. Okay. All right. So you see what they're doing, okay? So these wealthy women live in Shomron, the capital, right? And again, the capital city is the area. This is the area where the seat. It's the seat of power, and this is the seat of corruption. All right, and the point here is that the women as well as the men were engaging in sinful activity. And so what it's saying, the interesting thing here is the order of this, right? They do all this, they oppress or extort the poor, and they oppress the needy. And then afterwards they say, come on, bring the wine and let's carouse. Carousing means heavy drinking and having a lot of fun. All right, and it's almost as if they're saying, well, now we got all these goodies or this money that we got from these poor folks. Let's go and spend it and have a good time. All right, and it's all, so it's a double whammy of sin, right? The oppression of the poor, and at the same time, going ahead in excess, drinking wine and whatever. It doesn't mention any sexual impropriety, but it's close. but it's a total moral disarray in these people. All right, so now the notion of Parot HaBashan. Okay, so you have, for example, in Deuteronomy, not the Azashir, in the poem at the end in chapter 32, Ha'azinu. So it says the following regarding God. God alone guided, Hashem guided them, no alien God alongside. I'm reading the English, so leading up to the Hebrew. God set them up atop the highlands to feast on the yield of the earth, nursing them with honey from the crag and oil from the flinty rock, curd of kine, which means of cattle, curd of kine, interesting, and milk of flocks with the best of lambs, and rams of Bashan, and he-goats with the very finest wheat, foaming grape blood, etc., etc. Right? So but then what does it say? So the reference there is to the fatted animal, but then the next line it says, Vayishman Yeshurun. So Yeshurun, another name for Israel, grew fat, right? Vayishman Yeshurun. Vayibat Shamanta Avita Kasita, right? And they got fat and they kicked. You grew fat and gross and coarse, and they forsook the God who made them and spurned the rock of their support. So the point is there, Bashan is these very, very fattened animals. And then the interesting thing is, we're not talking about people directly, but the notion of being fattened is linked to all these different animals who, because the area, the Golan it's all volcanic soil, and it's very rich. It's a wonderful place to grow things, not just wine. And by the way, Shomron is not necessarily there, but up there you can make very good. Well, I don't know if they knew about it back then, but the wine that they make up there in the Golan is delicious because of the nature of over there, the soil. It's good soil. Anyway, so this is one instance, and it's associated. So Bashan is associated ultimately, indirectly, to be sure, with the notion of getting fat. Okay, but then you have a positive one, and this is Ezekiel 39, verse 18. All right, this is now a blessing that God will give the people once they return to the land. It's Ezekiel 39, right? So this is after the vision of the dry bones, and Amos is prophesying, Ezekiel, Yechezkel, is prophesying the return of the people. So this is what God's going to feed them. Basar giborim tochelu, bedam nesiyeh haaretz atishtu, elim, karim, va'atudim, parim, mri'eh, bashan, kulam. Okay? You shall eat the flesh of warriors, drink the blood of the princes of the earth, meaning lambs, rams, lambs, he-goats, and bulls, fatlings of Bashan, all of them. So everything at Bashan is big and fat. In other words, well-fed, good stuff. And they'll be able to partake of that when they resettle the land, when the people go back into the land. But there's not one more instance, and I'm not saying these are all of them, where Bashan is used. This is, again, not directly regarding cattle, excuse me, but close. No, it is. You'll see. So it says, and this is Psalm 22, verse 13. This is the one that begins, Eli, Eli, lama azavtani. My God, why have you abandoned me? And this man is talking about the fact his enemies seem constantly around him, making his life miserable. And so one of the lines it says regarding the enemies, he says, Svavuni parim rabim, abirei bashan kitruni. Many bulls surround me. Mighty ones of Bashan encircle me. So here you have not a woman, right, but a male Bashan, big bulls from Bashan. Again, the size associated with Bashan. So that's what Amos is now using that, but he's now specifically focusing that as on the women, right, the cows of Bashan, and that's of course is a metaphor for the wealthy, large women who lived, and they were drunks. I mean, they loved to go drink. That was their big thing. After, it's almost they celebrated when they successfully defrauded some poor guy and got some money or some property or whatever from him. So that's what's going on there. So this was all right. Moving on, verse 2. Nishba Adonai Elohim b'kadsho. God, I say God. Here it is again, right? My sovereign Adonai Yud-Heh Vav-Heh took an oath in his kadsho, right, on his holiness. Ki hinei yamim ba'im aleichem v'nisadchem b'tzimnot ve'acharitchem b'sirot duga. This is again talking to the women. So God swears on his holiness. All right, so what does that mean? God is swearing on his holiness. I mean, we know God is holy, but what is this? Why would it say kadsho? Okay, Taivel.
Is this holy in the sense of being separate and different?
That's part of it. Yeah. Yes, it is. Yes. But again, Kedusha, excuse me, is in a sense the essence of God.
He swears on his own essence. He swears on his essence.
What?
He swears on his essence, on his.
That's right. He's swearing on his most profound essence. Exactly. And the whole point is, when you are godly, you are in the book of Deuteronomy, Bnei Israel 4 times are called holy. We may have talked about this once before, but it's worth reminding you. Generally speaking, in the Torah, the holiness of Israel is something, it's aspirational. Okay, it's not existential. It's aspirational. Kadoshim tihiyu, you shall be holy, right? It's the goal that you have to ascend, to which you have to ascend. In Deuteronomy, they flip it and they say, you are holy. Therefore, God expects a lot out of you. Okay, but the point is, you are supposed to, you have this potential, this sanctity within you. Therefore, you must live a godly life. And if you don't, then you're compromising what is part of your essence. Holiness is not part of your essence. So it's even worse than aspiring and slipping back, right? Because you still haven't gotten there. But now you're there. But if you screw up, pardon my French, it's an even greater sin. Okay, and the problem, of course, in Deuteronomy is he sees that the whole people who are a holy people, a lot of them are sacrificing to pagan gods. That's Deuteronomy, right? It's the most, we said this before, it's the most anti-pagan book in the Bible. Every other page, right, almost, really, it's fixated on that. Understandably, why? Anyway, so God then is swearing on his essence, his holiness, that the women, days are coming where you will be carried off. Now here it says baskets, and to the last one in fish baskets. I don't like that. There's another meaning for these words. Tzinot and sirot. All right? Sinot can also mean, you ready for this? Fish hooks. And it says in the last two words, sirot duga, which means pots of fish. So you, fatted cows, are going to be taken out of the town. We'll see about that in a minute. Like fish on fish hooks and fish in a pot of fish. So think about that. Imagine a dead fish on a fish hook, right? And think about the fact also that it not only is it a dead fish, but it's probably a very smelly fish. So this has got
Worse and worse.
it's disgusting, right? But think something else. What does a dead fish look like? All right, and it's hanging still on the hook with which it was caught, right? And that's how they keep them. They probably string them out or something. Okay, and so the para from Bashan is Gesundher, right? The fish is a skinny little ugly thing. So it's almost the antithesis.
Depending on what you catch.
What?
Depending on what you catch.
Yeah, well, I'm trying to think biblically here.
Okay.
Stinky little fish. Got the stinky little fish.
Bad luck.
I mean, and well, I'm going to get to something about that in just a minute. But the point is that it's a powerful, it's antithetical to the para mibashan.
Right.
And this is, and undoubtedly the woman from Bashan who's wealthy has got all kinds of oils that she can put on with scent, right, to cover over her sweat. So she's got her own deodorant and that's what they did, by the way. You know that they had flavored or oils with spices and certain things mixed in, so you could put it on your body and you wouldn't stink. So that's the fatted cow of Bashan. But now the skinny little dead fish caught on a hook with its mouth open. It's ugly, horrible. And he's saying that's what you're going to look like when they kick you out of town. Or you'll be potted and they won't even see you at all. You'll be in there, one on top of the other, dead, smelly, yuck. Ich. So it's an ich that's going to be kicked out.
Yeah.
That's what's waiting you fat cows. Okay, Tybal.
Two things I thought you would like to know. I use Machon Mamre so I don't have to hold anything, which is the JPS 1917. And the JPS 1917 does say that ye shall be taken away with hooks and your residue with fish hooks.
Good.
So it is translated. That's one. But the other is in a time period when dental care wasn't what it was. So older people would lose all their teeth. The way the human face sinks in without teeth, that's what a fish on a fish hook might remind somebody
Yeah,
of.
very good. I like that. I had that same sort of image, it's just this open mouth. Yeah.
Oh, this is getting more gross.
Make it as gross as you want. That's what this is supposed to mean.
Yeah.
Now, but here, there's a question that popped into my head. Okay. So I'll share it with you. Where is Amos from? Amos is from Tekoa. Okay. Tekoa is an area you can do farming, but it's on the edge. It's on the southern part of Judah. It's south of Jerusalem, and it's on the edge of the desert. Now, the closest body of water, which is maybe, 15, 20 miles away, is the Dead Sea.
Right.
Right.
But there's no fish there.
That's right. The Mediterranean is 70 miles west, right, which might as well be the other end of the world. Plus, remnants of the Philistines were still on that coast.
Right.
Remember, the Philistines, by the way, the Philistines and the Ashdod people and the Egyptians, to whom he was referring earlier in chapter 3, later on he says, witness these things. They may be around as witnessing, in other words, testifying that God is doing these things. Okay? Anyhow. So where does this fish image pop into the head of a farmer who lives near the desert? Nowhere around. Now, and similarly, Shomron is also the closest body of water would be the Sea of Galilee, the Kinneret, but that's 50 miles northeast of Shomron. So, I mean, there also, where's water? Where are these fishing? Why does fish come into play? Okay, I don't know the answer. It may be, maybe.
Can we think of Jordan River?
No, the Jordan River doesn't have any fish. No.
Maybe you took a trip to the Kinneret.
It's possible. I don't know. But the point is, look, I mean, it may be that these wealthy people can import fish from the Kinneret.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Yeah.
Oh, and that's what they bring. That's known. If he's there, he's in Beit El though. When he's talking now, he's
not a distance booker.
Yeah. The point is, anyhow. So I'm not sure. There must have been some image of this that was popular and well known, because he's using imagery that he assumes that the people will understand. So it may be actually that the one thing that these wealthy families could do is bring down fish from the Kinneret, and, pay somebody to go the 50 miles, buy a bunch of fish and bring it down. But that's fresh fish, right? The implication here is dead fish, or, fish that are blech. Okay. So maybe that's it, that these people in Shomron got the wealthy got fish. Could be, because that was a kind of a luxury for them, All right, except there's one thing I must say. The only way that we could suggest that Amos himself would have been coming from Tekoa, right? From with the Dead Sea in mind, it could be that he was aware of salted Machas herring that we know swim in the Dead Sea.
Machas herring.
Oh, joke, folks. The old Rabbi.
Right.
Machas herring is quite salty if you haven't had some recently.
Yeah, it's very good.
They swim in. All right, never mind. That's like we used to say. When we lived in New York, they hadn't yet cleaned out the Hudson, right? And the only fish that swam in the Hudson was gefilte fish. So I mean, this notion of fish in grimy water has history with me. Okay. All right. Anyhow, just it's interesting to think about these things. This is a minutia, I know, except this image of the fish is just amazing. It's very, very creative. Very creative. All right. But now the next line, now he's talking to the women. This continues. Okay. So, Ufratzim tetzena isha negda, the hishlachtina, my lines are, hold on. Yeah, the hishlach. Tena, right. V'hishlachtena hacharmona numadonai. All right. So the women will go out through breaches opposite each woman and be sent away to Mount Hermon. All right. I got to explain a few things. All right, so here, pratzim are they're breaches, as in breach in a wall of a city, right? When you think about a breach regarding a city, you're probably talking about the wall was breached. So it was cracked, it was destroyed. So the women are walking out through, in fact, that there are lots of women, presumably, means there are lots of cracks in the wall of the city because the city will have been overrun by a mighty enemy. Okay, and this, he may have had in mind Assyrians, because at his time they were already beginning to make noise. Okay, so they would walk through the wall of the city, through these cracks that are right there in front of them, and then I will send you off to Harmon. Now, it doesn't say Hermon, it says Harmon.
Harmona, yeah.
Now, what Harmona means to Haron, right?
Harmon.
At the end, right? That's like, when you go to a location, right? Yerushalayma,
Yeah.
but you're going there. So it's directional.
Right.
So now, if indeed it is Hermon, and it's interesting, that's a mountain, right? And these ladies, where are they living? On Har Shomron, a mountain. Their mountain in Shomron is probably like Beverly Park, okay, Bel Air,
Yeah.
luxurious, right, pleasant, nice location, good ambiance, right? So that's one mountain. And now where are they going to go for punishment? To another mountain, the tallest mountain in the region, Hermon. And what is that mountain like? Bleak, damp, cold, snow, right?
Mm-hmm.
No luxurious shops, right? What are you going to eat? Okay, it's interesting. Again, this notion of an antithesis, right? The fish versus the cow, this mountain versus that mountain. All right, he's really this Amos guy is brilliant in terms of his use of metaphor. All right, so that's where they're going to be sent. But the point is, it could be more than metaphor, because again, if he's learned about the Assyrians, and clearly he has an understanding of the politics of the area that we've already seen.
Mm-hmm.
So he knows that what was the strategy of the Assyrians. What did they do to the local population very often? What would they do? Ship them out, right? They would ship them out in order to guarantee or to minimize the potential for revolt. Okay, and that was standard operating procedure. I mentioned to you the freeze of the Lachish battle in 700 in the town of Lachish, when they actually Assyrians conquered that. That's southwest of Jerusalem. They didn't conquer everything, but they were picking up significant cities. And then, of course, they lost it when the Babylonians began to become powerful. Anyway, but they would take these guys out, and they did that to many, many countries. They did it to the Israelites in the end, 722, 720. That's what they were doing. Okay, and I think you got to see this as being an expression of that same strategy. They're going to be taken out to a horrible place far away. Now, the Hermon today is not that far, but the fact is it's outside of Canaan, and it's being what it is. It's a horribly bitter place to go. Okay, Tybal.
I was just going to say, when you're saying that, I was reminded of the Soviets sending people to Siberia.
Yes, exactly. Same kind of thing. Right. Very good. Yeah, exactly. Now, unfortunately, the problem is that Harmon, other than here, is found nowhere in the Bible. In fact, it's not even listed in the concordance or in the dictionary. It's like it doesn't exist. I think, but it could. I'm not sure why. How that it's how the commas got. It's a not a kamatz. It's the vertical line. No, what? Come on. Patach. It's a patach. Straight line. It could have been Hermon. And for some reason, it got changed to Harmon. I don't know. The JPS has Yishlachtena HaCharmona. It says flung into the refuse heap. But that doesn't make sense. What, are you going to walk out through the wall and be flung into a refuse heap? It doesn't make sense. And especially since this is talking about, if you read it as Hermon, and the fact that it's from one mountain to another mountain, it makes good sense that it is Hermon. And I can tell you that Sweeney follows what I think is right, that it is Hermon. It's just a change for some reason in the vocalization. And I think the flung into a refuse heap is really pushing it. I mean, cherem, cherem it means when you cut something off, right? And it
excommunicate.
That's one reason, right? But cherem can also be something that is dedicated is cherem. If it's got some specific religious dedication, it means nobody can touch it. So it's cut off from use. Okay, so it means separated and cut off. And but what does that have to do with a refuse heap? Is garbage. Okay, and it just, I don't like it. I think Sweeney is right. It makes sense. It makes much more sense to me that it be referring to Mount Hermon. Let's see what our timing is. Okay, we still got 10 minutes. Good. All right, moving on. Questions? Okay. Now we're switching again. We're finished with the ladies. And now we're going back to one of the reasons why I believe that Jacob was mentioned. We're now going to focus on Gilgal. And we're going to come and we're going to see Gilgal and its meaningless sacrifices. And we're going to pick up on a motif that recurs frequently in the prophetic tradition. Okay? All right. Ba'u Beit El ufishu hagilgal harbu lith shoah. Okay? Haviu la boker zivchechem lishloshet yamim ma'asrotechem. All right? So come to Beit El and transgress, to Gilgal and transgress even more. Present your sacrifices the next morning and your tithes on the third day. Okay, then continuing into verse 5, V'kater mechametz todah, v'kir'u nedavot hashmiu, ki chen ahavtem b'nei Yisrael, and burn a thank offering of leavened bread, and proclaim free will offerings loudly, for you love that sort of thing, O Israelites, declares sovereign Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh. Okay, so what does this mean? It says, great, go to Beit El. So he's sort of teaching corrupt Torah to the people. God is. Go to Beit El, sin. Go to Gilgal, do more sinning. Then bring in the morning after the day you sin your sacrifices, your zebach, your free will offering, okay? And then, the next day, bring a tithe. Okay, so it sounds like he's saying, fulfill your religious, at least fulfill your religious obligations. He says, and then it says, burn the incense, not incense, burn the Todah with the Todah offering, the thank offering, burn the leavened bread, and announce the fact that we have done good, we have made these voluntary offerings. We are wonderful people. Everybody, look what we did. We gave all this offering, this maaser and all that stuff. Hooray for us. Because this is what you love to do. Okay. The first thing to notice is the order. Sin in Gilgal, sin in Beit El, and then offer your sacrifices. Okay? This is what God is suggesting based upon their behavior. This is what you like to do. Oh, hey, go ahead, fine. Do what you love to do. That. All right? I would suggest that this is this is what they've become accustomed to doing. So they do something bad, and then they offer sacrifices and tithes. So they offer sacrifices. Why are they offering sacrifices? I'm going to suggest make God happy. Right? I'm going to show God I love him. And then what do they do with the tithes? Who gets the tithes? The priests get the tithes. So I'm going to keep the priests happy. So I'll do all my sinning, and then I'll go ahead and do my religious stuff, and then I can brag about it. Wonderful us. He says, this is what you do all the time. You know, it reminds me of the mafiosi, right? Who take machine guns and gun down 10 people, and then go to church for confessional, right? And they, ablution, whatever happens, blah, blah, blah. And then they go ahead and do what? The same thing all over again. And that's what makes them happy. They feel good. I righted everything with God, and now I can continue to do it. Okay? This is what God is saying. This is what God is saying to them. Okay? And the whole point here is, what does it do with, what is he going to say? What do we know? Where is he hinting? That's not how you do sacrifices. That doesn't work, because the sacrifice that is tainted by these acts is neutralized. It's negated, worthless. But they don't understand that. Well, they choose not to understand it. But there's a little hidden in it. It says, burn a thank offering of chametz. If you look in Vayikra, in Tzav, or maybe it's in Vayikra itself. I just forgot the chapter. I think it's chapter 7, so that would be Tzav. For the thank offering, it's matzot, not leavened bread. So even when they do that, they don't pay attention to the details, what's listed in the law code. It's got them coming and going here. Okay? All right, Tybal.
Two things. You don't have to go all the way to mafiosi. You could just talk about Old Man Kennedy.
Look, I watched the whatchamacallits.
What at Kennedy between, the financial whatever. Okay. But the other reference that I thought of, which is of course much later, but wasn't it St. Augustine that said, God give me chastity and something else, but not yet?
What?
You talking about?
St. Augustine, the big Christian saint, St. Augustine, his famous prayer was, give me, what were the two things?
Sobriety.
Give me chastity and something else.
Sobriety.
Oh, yeah, chastity and sobriety, but not yet.
Oh.
I don't understand what the connection is.
Oh, he wants these different...
It's a joke.
I mean, it's half a joke because to me, this verse reads like as if it's sarcasm.
Of course it is.
Well, it is. Of course it is.
It is sarcasm.
That's exactly what it is.
And it's not that St. Augustine was sarcastic. It's just this is the human reality that that for some doing all these things is just so tempting, even when you know it's wrong. All right, never mind.
And his message here is not a point. He is specifically saying this is done with full awareness of what's going on. In other words, this is intentional.
Right.
And they may firmly believe that that's how God operates. Yes, that's possible. But what Amos is telling them is that's not how it works. Okay, that's not how it works. And I think the point that you're making, Tybal, is that very often there is, in terms of dealing with guilt and forgiveness and all these things, there are, a lot of people who engage in religious ceremony, but who, in terms of interpersonal relationships, are total failures, and they don't see the connection between the two. Okay, I mean, that's why, for example, Yom Kippur, we tell everybody over and over again, and it's the law. Your forgiveness that you're going to get from this, if you daven and make promises to God and fulfill them, that's from God. But it does not fulfill your obligation to dealing with people whom you hurt. That has to first come from people. Then God will consider it. Okay, because there are a lot of people who believe as long as I go, look, you got Jews who do it all the time, right? As long as I go to shul, God will forgive me. I can run a crooked business. I can not pay my income tax. I can do this. I can do that. But when I go to shul, God will forgive me. It's as if they believe in a split personality God, in a bipolar God. There's the God who forgives and the God who forgets.
Yeah, that's a good one. I like that.
Yeah, that's cute. Yeah.
That is very good.
Yeah.
Forgives and forgets. Yes. Good.
I just made that up.
Yeah, that's good. It's brilliant.
I got to remember that for a sermon.
Do it. Do remember.
Yeah. Anyhow, I mean, but that happens in all faiths. And the religious authorities keep banging and banging away and saying, no, no, no. Now, you may know that this is a theme that recurs within the prophetic traditions. I'm going to read you some examples of that now, all right? And with this, I think we'll conclude. Some example of other prophets expressing the same notion in different ways. So I got the great Isaiah, chapter 1, verses 10 and 11, okay? Hear the word of God, you chieftains of Sodom. Give ear to our God's instructions, you folk of Gomorrah. Right? So who is Sodom and Gomorrah here?
They're horrible.
No, they're Israel. They're the Jewish people. Yeshayahu is yelling at his people. Okay. What need have I of all your sacrifices, says God? I am sated with burnt offerings of rams, suet of fatlings, blood of bulls, and I have no delight in lambs and he-goats. I don't want any of that junk.
Exactly.
Why? Later on in chapter 1, he says, verses 15 and 16, wash yourselves clean, put your evil doings away from my sight, cease to do evil, learn to do good, devote yourselves to justice and aid the wronged, uphold the rights of the orphan, defend the cause of the widow. Then I'll consider your sacrifices. Okay, so they're very powerful, and that's chapter 1 of Isaiah. He lays it out right away. Doesn't pull punches, okay? And then you have Hosea, right? 6:6. For I desire goodness, not sacrifice, devotion to God rather than burnt offerings. Yeah. And so Amos is basically in this tradition, right? And then Isaiah, this is now 2nd Isaiah, chapter 58, verses 3 through 10. It's a little bit long, but I want to read it. But you know this because this is from the Haftarah of Yom Kippur. Deals with fast days. Okay, so this is what it says. All right, so the people are asking the prophets, or the prophet, why when we fasted did you not see, meaning God? When we starved our bodies, why did you pay no heed? That's what they're saying to God through the prophet. And then Isaiah answers for God. Because on your fast day you see to your business and oppress all your laborers, because you fast in strife and contention, and you strike with a wicked fist. Your fasting today is not such as to make your voice heard on high. Is such the fact that it is such the fact that I desire a day for men. Is such the fast I desire a day for men to starve their bodies? Is it bowing the head like a bulrush and lying in sackcloth and ashes? Do you call that a fast? A day when the Lord is favorable? No. This is the fast I desire, to unlock fetters of wickedness and untie the cords of the yoke, to let the oppressed go free, to break off every yoke. It is to share your bread with the hungry and to take the wretched poor into your home. When you see the naked, to clothe him, and not to ignore your own kin. Then shall your light burst forth through like the dawn, and your healing spring up quickly, and our vindicator shall march before you. The presence of the Lord shall be your rear guard. Then when you call, the Lord will answer, and when you cry, he will say, Here I am. If you banish the yoke from your midst, the menacing hand and evil speech, and you offer your compassion to the hungry and satisfy the famished creature, then shall your light shine in darkness, and your gloom shall be like noonday. Okay? So, very clear. This is ritual. But the same thing, right? Religious activity, sacrificing, ritual is meaningless unless it is done in conjunction with morality, ethics, goodness, fairness, righteousness. That's the message of the prophets. And Amos is among them. Okay? Powerful stuff, good stuff. So at least we can end on a sort of a high note.
You have been listening to another in our series of podcasts from Temple Beth Am, a dynamic center for conservative Judaism in Los Angeles. If you enjoy these podcasts, we invite you to write a review on the Apple Podcast site or wherever you get your podcasts. For more information about Temple Beth Am Los Angeles, go to tbala.org.